ready to ditch that to-do list overwhelm and unlock a whole new level of productivity. We're diving deep into the insights of Dan Coe, an entrepreneur who's really cracked the code on peak performance.
Yeah, and you know what's really interesting about Coe? He goes way beyond just those surface level tips and tricks. He's like really diving into the psychology of productivity, right? It's not about just brute forcing it.
I love that because it's so easy to get caught up in just like the daily grind and you forget like, why are we even doing this?
It's about aligning your actions with what you're trying to do.
Okay, so where does Coe say this journey to like peak productivity, like where does it begin?
He lays out these 4 distinct phases of progress that honestly we all experience, and he uses this really cool analogy like comparing life to a video game.
Okay, I'm listening. I do love a good video game analogy.
Right, so in a game you have levels, challenges, you have those aha moments when you like finally figure something out, and life's kind of like that too, right? So Coe is arguing it's not just like this straight shot to success, it's a cycle. You know, we move through.
So no more beating ourselves up for not being like perfectly productive 24/7.
Yeah, no more beating yourself up. Now the first phase, Coe calls it perplexity. And think of that feeling when you like start a new game and you're kind of fumbling with the controls, you're not even sure what you're supposed to be doing.
Oh, been there. Staring at my to-do list like it's written in another language.
That's perplexity.
Yeah.
And Coe says instead of fighting it, lean in. Allow yourself to be bored.
Wait, boredom, isn't that like the enemy of getting things done?
It might seem counterintuitive, but Coe's saying that boredom can actually spark curiosity. Think about it, like when you're constantly just bombarded with distractions like your phone, social media, a million tabs open, your mind never gets a chance to just kind of wander, to stumble on what truly interests you, right?
So by stepping away from those distractions and like allowing ourselves to actually feel bored, we're creating space for those aha moments to bubble up.
Exactly. And that's where Coe's second phase, curiosity, kicks in. It's like leveling up in that video game analogy, right?
So we go from like lost and unsure to like curious and ready to explore.
Exactly. So you're actively searching for a problem to solve, a new skill to master, something you're genuinely passionate about. So you might devour information, you might experiment, you figure what truly resonates with you, right?
There's that saying, the cure for boredom is curiosity. There is no cure for curiosity.
I love that.
Okay.
And Coe emphasizes the importance of trying new things during this phase. You know, even if they seem random at first, it's about uncovering what truly motivates you. It's like finding your own internal compass.
That really resonates with me because some of my most productive periods were like sparked by just diving headfirst into something totally new. And it's like that initial curiosity just fueled everything that came after.
And that, my friend, that leads us to the third phase, intensity. That's where things get really exciting.
Okay, hit me with it. I'm ready for the intensity.
This is where everything just clicks, you know? You found your purpose, you're clear on your goals, and you're totally absorbed in the process, right? You hit peak focus. And those long work days, they just fly by.
The zone. We've all heard about it. Those moments when you're completely in flow, right?
Precisely. It's not about forcing yourself. It emerges naturally when you are aligned with your purpose. It's like a lion hunting its prey.
I love that analogy, but how do we like tap into that kind of intensity in our own lives? Especially when it comes to like, say, you know, answering emails or balancing the budget.
And that's where the previous phases are crucial, right? You can't force intensity. It emerges from that deep connection to your why.
So finding your purpose is like the fuel for those bursts of intense productivity, but we can't stay in that high intensity mode forever, can we?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Burnout is a real thing, even for lions. Which brings us to Coe's final phase, consistency.
This is the one I always struggle with, right? Like we've all had those bursts of motivation that just kind of fizzle out way too quickly.
It's so common, but Coe has this really refreshing take on consistency, right? He says it's not about just like grinding yourself down. It's about making those smart choices to maintain the progress that you've already made, right? Remember those video game levels we were just talking about? You don't want to keep starting back at level 1.
Right, so consistency is more about like playing the long game, making those small sustainable changes that add up over time.
Exactly. Building habits and routines that support your goals without leading to that dreaded burnout. Even lions need to rest. Now, speaking of avoiding those productivity dips, Coe identifies some common focus blockers that can really trip us up.
Okay, let's unpack those. What are we talking about here? And more importantly, like how do we get rid of them?
So Coe breaks them down into 4 main categories. The first one is no surprise, lack of purpose. Like, if you don't know why you're doing something, it's really hard to stay focused. It's like wandering through a maze, no exit in mind. You'll just keep hitting those dead ends.
Makes perfect sense, which kind of connects back to what you were saying about boredom, right? Sometimes we need to, like, disconnect to actually connect with what matters.
Exactly, you got it. Now, the second focus blocker is a bit more practical. A distracting environment.
Oh, I am terrible with this one. I need a clean and organized workspace, or like my brain just feels as cluttered as my desk.
I hear ya. Coe talks about like really taking control of your environment, both physically and digitally. So he even recommends like tossing out anything that doesn't serve your goals.
Wow, sounds extreme.
It sounds extreme, but I've tried it. It's surprisingly liberating.
Like hitting the reset button?
Yeah.
And while we're on the topic of getting rid of the things that are holding us back, this next one kind of surprised me. Poor diet.
This one is often overlooked. Coe argues that, like, what you eat directly impacts your focus and your energy. Think about it. When you're fueling your body with heavy processed foods, you're basically asking it to run a marathon on junk food.
Ouch, yeah. So we're talking about, like, making sustainable changes here, not just crash dieting our way to productivity.
Right. Coe suggests things like intermittent fasting or even just being mindful of portion sizes. It's really about experimenting to see what works best for you.
I've heard great things about intermittent fasting. Might need to look into that. Okay, what's that final focus blocker that we need to watch out for?
Knowledge gaps. That feeling of being stuck because you just don't have the skills or information to move forward.
It's like hitting a wall in that video game analogy. You need a new skill or a new tool to progress.
Exactly. And Coe's advice here is simple but powerful, right? Integrate learning into your daily routine.
I love that. Instead of scrolling through social media, listen to a podcast, read a few pages of a book. Those little moments add up.
It's about being intentional with your time, choosing inputs that align with your goals, and ultimately help you level up. Speaking of leveling up, this ties into what Coe calls exponential events.
Exponential events. I like the sound of that. Tell me more.
These are those moments of like massive progress, those boosts forward. And Coe believe they're often sparked by trying new things, pushing past your comfort zone.
So how do we make those exponential events happen? Like, is it luck? Or can we actually create them?
Coe would say it's not about luck. It's about being ready to capitalize on opportunities when they pop up. And that brings us to his kind of philosophy of think big, act small.
Okay, I've heard that phrase before, but I'm ready to hear Coe's take on it.
He's all about having that big, ambitious vision for your life, but then breaking it down into manageable steps. It's like that roadmap in our video game. You need to know the final destination, but also the individual steps to actually get there.
So instead of getting overwhelmed by like the sheer size of our goals, we can focus on those immediate actions that we can take today. Those small steps that are going to move us in the right direction.
Exactly. Yeah, Coe actually talks about setting these 10-year goals right, and then breaking them down to 1 year, to monthly, even daily priority tasks. So there's like creating that roadmap to success and just focusing on those smaller milestones along the way.
Love it.
He's a big believer in identifying like your top priorities each day, so the tasks that will have the most impact, and then relentlessly just focusing on those.
Yeah, that really resonates with me because, you know, when I start my day and I'm feeling really scattered, it's usually because I haven't taken the time to actually like prioritize. But when I'm really clear on what needs to get done, then I'm always amazed by how much I can actually accomplish.
Yeah, it's about working smarter, not harder, right? And speaking of working smarter, Coe has one final piece of advice that I think is really crucial for sustained success. And he's a huge advocate for actually building feedback loops into your process.
Okay.
He calls it the weekly review. And it's all about reflecting on what worked, what didn't, and then, you know, how you can improve moving forward.
So it's like taking a step back to like assess your progress and then make adjustments as needed rather than just like blindly charging ahead.
Yes.
Almost like that moment in a video game where like you check your inventory, you maybe swap out some gear, you get ready for that next challenge.
Precisely, yeah. And Coe actually uses a specific set of questions to guide his weekly review.
Oh, interesting.
So he looks at, you know, what went well this past week, what didn't go so well, what am I grateful for, and then what are my focus projects for the coming week.
I love that he incorporates gratitude into like a productivity practice because it's so easy to get caught up in like what's not working that we forget to like appreciate how far we've come.
It's a powerful mindset shift. You know, and Coe argues that that this regular practice of reflection is what separates those who achieve like lasting success from those who, just kind of get stuck in those cycles of short-lived motivation followed by disappointment.
Yeah, it's about constantly learning, adapting, evolving.
Yes.
Not being afraid to course correct when something's not working.
Yeah.
Which really ties back to that idea you mentioned earlier, like thinking big but acting small.
Yes.
We're constantly iterating, we're making those small adjustments along the way.
You got it.
It's not about being perfect, it's about being persistent and willing to adjust your approach based on feedback.
100%.
This has been such an insightful deep dive into unlocking our inner productivity lions.
I like that.
We've covered so much ground today, from those 4 phases of progress to identifying and banishing those focus blockers, harnessing the power of those exponential events, and building those really crucial feedback loops into our routines.
It's all about the system, right?
Yeah.
And it all comes back to Coe's core message, right? Productivity, it's not about rigid rules. It's about understanding yourself, your rhythms, your goals, and then creating a system that works with you, not against you.
So as you go about your week, think about this. What's one small action you can take today to align yourself with the vision you have for your life? Maybe it's finally decluttering that workspace, experimenting with intermittent fasting, or maybe even trying out that weekly review.
I love it.
Whatever it is, remember, even small steps, when taken consistently, can lead to some pretty extraordinary results.